Driver, Liam Lawson, Team Red Bull. Duration 2 races, and there wasn't even time to warm up. The seat. Daniel. But nowadays, money, those things, no one has pity for anyone in Formula 1 anymore. Really? 2009. Luca Badua, Ferrari. 2 races. But back then it was already quite professionalized. Is it? 1993, Ivan Capelli, Jordan, alongside Rubens Barrichello. 2 races. Have you figured out what we're going to talk about today? That's right. We're going to talk about drivers who, after just a few races, were let go. Fired, demoted, sent to chase frogs, find their group, head home, etc. And the list includes famous people, but also some that I would call forgettable in history. Let's go. Ivan Capelli was a Formula 1 driver who debuted well, always had a certain hype, and when his golden opportunity to drive a top car came, the top car wasn't top. And it was the worst team in the world when it was in crisis. What does that mean? Most of the time. Born in Milan, where he was also raised, Ivan Capelli entered Formula 1 in 1985. He raced in 2 events that year. One, the European Grand Prix held at Brands Hatch, ended with a retirement, but he caught everyone's attention with a 4th place in Australia, in Adelaide, scoring his first points in his 2nd race with a Tyrrell car. That wasn't much. But that didn't help much because in '86, he didn't secure a full-time driver position racing in 2 events again at the end of the year, this time for the very weak AGS team. He competed in the Italian Grand Prix and the Portuguese Grand Prix retirement. But he had sponsors, he had results in the lower categories, he had a 4th place to claim as his own. 3 points scored in his 2nd appearance. And then March, which would become Leighton House in the following years, hired him. At that time, the team only had 1 car. In the past, in Formula 1, this was allowed, and it is in Capelli that the expectations are placed. And it would end up working out, evidently by the standards of a team considered small at that time. In a year with several retirements, he managed a 6th place in Monaco, which is not for just anyone. These results are enough for the team to keep him, and then the operation expands in '88, and he would pair with the Brazilian Maurício Gugelmin. Gugelmin and Capelli struggled in the Leighton House March, small, with financial problems, sometimes great cars, or great cars by the standards of a small team. It's true, they scored points here, caused trouble there. There's even a fairy tale race at Paul Ricard, 1990, where they led 1st and 2nd, Capelli and Gugelmin, for 2/3 of the race. And Capelli was only overtaken by Prost in the final laps. That's why at the end of '91, when March was already going downhill, he signed to race for Ferrari in '92, replacing none other than Alain Prost, who had been fired before the Australian Grand Prix that year in '91. Everyone thinks Ferrari is going to be a challenge in '92. Alesi and Capelli, 2 drivers known for their speed, 2 daring guys who, for the first time, have the chance with a top team. In this case, Alesi already had a year with Ferrari and hadn't done poorly alongside Prost. But then Ferrari shows up with the F92A, a disaster. Everything goes wrong and Capelli ends up being let go before the season ends. From this, he would never recover. He competes in 12 out of 16 races. He scores points twice, a 5th in Brazil, a 6th in Hungary. And after 3 more retirements, Ferrari's patience runs out. And he wouldn't appear in the last 2 races, being replaced by Gianni Morbidelli. But this wouldn't be the end of Capelli's career in Formula 1. And he returns to this list to be fired again. J. Leto. I will get his full name here for you and try to pronounce it. Otherwise, the editor will put the correct one for us. He had everything to have been a big name in Formula 1. I won't be able to do it. Editor, please do it, especially because it's J. Jota. And Leto is the end of the last surname. 𝘾𝙤𝙥𝙮𝙬𝙤 Leto. Born in 1966, he made his first appearance in Formula 1 in 1989 with Onyx, that team. that tested the car on a kart track in Rio de Janeiro, remember? It's worth checking out that story. He participated in 4 races that year, retired in 2, did not qualify in the other 2, and would race or try to race for the same team until the 10th round of 1990. In 1991, he raced for BMS Scuderia Italia and achieved a miraculous podium in San Marino behind Senna and Berger. In 1992, he continued there, the team was going downhill, and then in 1993, he hit the jackpot. It seemed like a shot in the dark, but the team was Sauber Mercedes, which in its debut scored points with him in 5th place. There were many retirements that year, but he managed another 4th place in San Marino. And then he was picked up by Flavio Briatore to race for Benetton in 1994 alongside Michael Schumacher. It seemed like a great deal, but Leto had a serious accident in the preseason. Perhaps a forewarning of what those extremely twitchy cars would be like with all the power maintained and without the electronic aids of '93. As a result, he was out of action for the first 2 races and was replaced by Jos Verstappen, who managed to be involved in a terrible accident in Interlagos, racing in the Pacific Grand Prix, and then in San Marino, Leto returned. But he clearly seemed out of rhythm. He retired, then finished 7th in Monaco in the following round. He retired in Spain, managed a 6th place, but Briatore had already seen enough. He took him out of the car and put Uncle Jos on board. But Jos, who had a heated season, if you know what I mean, also didn't help himself, crashing, making mistakes, throwing away results. And then Briatore, before the end of the year, would make another driver rotation. He puts Leto in the car at Monza and he finishes 9th. He puts him again at Estoril and he retires. That was enough. Briatore loses patience and sends Leto packing. Jos would race until the end of the season, but he also wouldn't continue in 1995. Jean-Denis Deletraz might be the epitome, the perfect example of a paying and slow driver. In his Formula One debut in 1994 with the Larousse team, which was no longer in its prime, although finding better days at Larousse is something difficult, but you get my point. He showed that he had no capability trailing a resounding, round, and unforgettable 10 seconds behind the back of the pack. Even so, he had money. In 1995, he returned to the Pacific cars, and if you don't remember that either, I don't blame you. His driving was so bad that he had real difficulty keeping the car on the track. And after 3 Grand Prix races, he was fired and became a joke in the paddock. To this day, his name is remembered as one of the worst paid drivers in history. After a lackluster season with Minardi in 2000, racing with the support of Telefonica, this video is sponsored, but not by them. Gaston Mazzacane, an Argentine, surprised the Formula One world by reappearing on Pong in a Prost car in 2001. But his performance did not impress anyone and quickly exhausted the patience of Alain Prost, now in the role of a team manager. He was frequently the last in qualifying and was lapped by his teammate in a car that was already not good. So imagine how many laps he was behind the front runners. His mistakes were frequent. After 4 races, Alain Prost called him in for a talk and said, "Look, it's not feasible." 𝘾𝙤𝙥𝙮 made his Formula One debut at 31 years of age. Honda's plan was to have a B team. The A team with Rubens Barrichello and Jenson Button, and the B team. An idea to create a team to develop Japanese drivers. Takuma Sato in one of the cars, while Yuji Ide was the second. And he had a respectable career racing touring cars in Japan. But he had never driven single-seaters, which are completely different. But in the other car, Takuma Sato, nowadays a winner, including the Indianapolis 500, was a driver who built his career through the normal path. He had results, he had speed, and the discrepancy between the two quickly became glaring. He made bizarre mistakes, caused completely unnecessary accidents, and almost killed Christijan Albers in Imola. Remember that? The guy took a tumble on the first lap. After that, the FIA was called to intervene in the case, revoked his super license, and even Sterling Moss came out of retirement to say, "Not this guy." His career in Formula One then lasted 4 Grand Prix and never again. Luca Badoer had a reasonably solid career in Formula One. In '93, he raced alongside Michele Alboreto at Scuderia Italia. In '94, he was without a drive, but in '95, he reappeared with Minardi. He was a fast guy, but he had only been with small teams. In '96, he raced for 40, which was no longer 40 course. He was without a drive in '97, '98, and returned in '99, again with Minardi. And there was that heartbreaking retirement at Nürburgring. When he was in 4th place, about to score wonderful points for the team, the car broke down. And he was left crying at the side of the track. After that, he couldn't secure a main driver position anymore, but he was hired by Ferrari as a test driver at a time when there was a lot of testing, and he drove thousands of kilometers for Ferrari in Fiorano, Mugello, Imola, Monza, and so on. Imola. And then there was even ingratitude for the services rendered. And after Schumacher showed that he wasn't in condition due to a motorcycle accident to race in place of Felipe Massa in 2009, Ferrari looked at Badoer and said, "So, it's your chance. Take over Felipe's car." And he took over Felipe's car. It was a tragedy. It was just 2 Grand Prix races, and that was enough. European Grand Prix in Valencia, where he finished 17th after qualifying last at a lamentable pace. And the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps, where he finished 14th, but 14th. And last at the checkered flag, ending on the same lap because the race had a safety car, and the lapped cars were able to unlap themselves anyway. This doesn't mean much. There were 2 races, and Ferrari went to get Giancarlo Fisichella from Force India to replace Badoer. Super Aguri was experiencing a drama in 2006 because Yuji Ide, as we already mentioned, lasted 4 races. And they called in a substitute, the Frenchman, Franck Montagny. But you heard me say that the plan was to have a team to develop Japanese drivers. Exactly. Which shows how they didn't trust the Japanese driver coming up, Sakon Yamamoto. Montagny had a reasonable amount of experience in other categories, but we know Formula One is different. There were 7 attempts and an immense difficulty to keep up with Sato, let alone at the same pace. And then a Japanese team, a Japanese reserve driver just hanging around, a Frenchman who wasn't solving anything, some dangerous maneuvers, people from the FIA already watching and wanting to revoke another super license. And it was inevitable. Another Sakado takes over the car, Yamamoto. Perry McCarthy, who would eventually become the Stig on the Top Gear program, possibly starred in one of the most bizarre moments in Formula One history, when his team sent him out on the track, with rain tires in dry conditions, with 45 seconds left to end the session. It seems like they didn't want him to drive, right? Well, I've already told the story of Andrea Moda in this video here. A delight for those who enjoy funny stories. But McCarthy was a paying driver, not a very paying one, in a team that was doomed from the start. Andrea Moda. They had bought the remnants of Colony and tried to race without paying the deposit check. The FIA was keeping an eye on trying to take them down, and they pretended they were trying to qualify while the team was trying to gather money to maybe try something the following year. The owner was a swindler with connections to the Italian mafia. In short, a mess. And McCarthy then parachuted into this team that was using an old design which had been made for BMW and would later become Simtech in 1994. What a mess! Trying to get it in running condition for Roberto Moreno, while McCarthy was basically inside the garage, playing, I swear to you, video games. When there was a car ready to try, there were 7 occasions. He never managed to get a time good enough to make it onto the grid. And I don't even blame the driver. If Andrea Moda had difficulty delivering a ready car for Moreno, who miraculously qualified in Monaco, imagine then, the second one. His stint was so bizarre that it became a book. I promise Scout's honor I will read it. And nowadays he gives, believe it or not, motivational speeches. There's someone who must understand motivation. But as a Formula One driver, his story was minuscule. Minardi in 2005 was at death's door, so to speak, accepting any extra penny, putting someone in the car. That's exactly what happened with our friend here, János Nyszány. Is that how you say it? Who was put in by Minardi to do a free practice in Hungary at 42 years old, which means there's still hope for me. But the money was initially just for that weekend, and Paul Stoddart kept a reserve ready because he said, if you perform very poorly, you won't do the Grand Prix. And guess what happened? He spun the car on the straight. He spun the car on difficult corners. He also spun on easy corners. He went off the track and ended up in the gravel trap several times. And then, predictably, Paul Stoddart called him aside and said, you're not going to race without the rights to a refund for the money paid for the weekend, because after all, the car was there at his disposal. The guy who couldn't keep it on the track. For the race then came the substitute, who was actually the main driver, Christian Albers, who had been sidelined because of Nyszány's money. After almost destroying his career in that ill-fated experience with Ferrari in 1992, Capelli reappears on the Formula One grid in '93. Perhaps there was some remnant of his reputation as a good driver left. Eddie Jordan then had the classic formula, an experienced and supposedly fast guy, and a promising rookie. This one here, Rubens Gonçalves Barrichello. But the problem is that Capelli not only qualified behind Rubens Barrichello in the Brazilian's Formula One debut, trailing by 4/10, but also retired from the race after 2 laps due to a spin. Rubens would also retire, but after 31 laps due to a gearbox problem. But nothing is so bad that it can't get worse. In the second round of the championship here at Interlagos, Barrichello qualifies his Jordan in 14th, and Capelli, let's go, can't make the grid time. Trailing 2.2 seconds behind his teammate, 5.9 seconds off the pole position was enough. Eddie Jordan asks for the car and says, you out, another experienced driver in. Thierry Boutsen would then take over. And Capelli would then achieve the feat of being fired twice in 2 consecutive years in Formula One. Remember all of these? Remember any that I didn't include on the list? Yes, I do remember myself. But to keep it from getting too long, I didn't make 20, 30, 40 here so we can create sequences in the future. This was another episode of Splash and Go on YouTube about those prematurely dismissed. I think we could make a series here because there are plenty of examples. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like, it's free, it costs nothing, it helps the channel a lot. Do me this favor, do us this favor. And I ask you to leave your hype with us, this new YouTube tool to show the blessed algorithm that you like our work, the channel's videos. If you want and can, and it's very important to boost our content distribution, which is decided by YouTube, leave us a comment, even a little emoji, so the algorithm understands that you engaged with the post and distributes it across the internet. I always mention here that our engagement is higher than channels with 10, 15, 20 times our number of subscribers, because when I ask you to leave a like, a comment, write anything down below, you do it. So having made my pitch, do me this favor, do us this favor, leave a comment there, so you don't miss out on anything. Here are our notification channels on Telegram, Instagram, and also WhatsApp, where you can join and start receiving an automatic message as soon as I publish each piece of content. Link down below, where you'll also find links to our social media, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and TikTok, where there's content all the time. Deal? Deal made. Thanks. And a big hug.